Carly from Glasshouse. Hi, Carly. Carly is the co-coordinator of the NAPAC Marketing and Box Office meetings for the New South Wales ACT Performing Arts Centres Association. We've got a subgroup of box office and marketing peeps that we meet a couple of times a year. And the one we were supposed to have this year was like in the lead up or the beginning of all of this. And, even on the Monday, we were like, no, we're meeting on the Friday. It's all going to happen. It's going to be fine. And by Tuesday, no, we're not meeting.
It was quite extraordinary, wasn't it? The speed of the decisions that everybody had to make quite quickly to get from one space to the other space. I know at council, the whole getting everyone out of the office and working remotely was adaptation extraordinarily fast. Like it was so quick. It was amazing. We'll give it another couple of minutes as everyone comes in. Lots of people are coming in. We've got Hobart, Tom from Hobart, Malcolm.
Hi, Tassie.
Tassie.
I think they've just had the 4th day with 0 new cases. Well done, Tasmania.
Oh, yes. Good to see it flattening out a little bit now. Sarah from Feral Arts is on. Hi, Sarah. No, it's good. Very good. I think we're, fingers crossed, we're heading in the right direction to come out the other side.
Let's hope.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, I think we might start to kick it off and have our Tuesday afternoon chat for Think Inside the Square. Hello, everyone. My name is Celia Pavelev and I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications at the Australia Council for the Arts. And once again, I'm getting away with saying that I'm your virtual MC for today, when in fact I'm actually very real and, like everyone else, adapting to a very new world. I'd like to acknowledge the Camaragal peoples, the traditional owners of the land from which I'm coming to you today in downtown St Leonards. I'd also like to acknowledge the many nations throughout Australia that we're gathering from here online to talk about cultures, platforms, and adapting digitally. I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present and acknowledge all First Nations peoples present and online with us today. This is the 6th session, which is quite hard to believe that this series didn't even exist 2 months ago. We've created it here on a Tuesday afternoon from 2 till 3. It's a Zoom session that we're sending out through Facebook Live. And today I'm joined by 2 colleagues that I've known for some years who we've all previously adapted in lots of ways to changing marketing, media, audiences and communication environments. We're almost old hands at it. So when we entered COVID land, we adapted again very swiftly, very intensely, and I dare say we are not done yet. So I'm very grateful and for their generosity of their time to join us today to have a little chat. Little housekeeping, and everyone knows the drill now. It's not about exits and firewalls and all sorts of other things. It's just about the little Q&A box and the chat box, depending on which platform you're joining us from. Send in your questions and we'll either answer them as we're going through the session or we'll save them up to the end. But please feel free to chat away in the box. We also have closed captions available through Zoom, and you'll see that on your little taskbar at the bottom to click through. So I think without any further ado, I think we might jump into our first panellist, Jonathan Llewellyn, who is the manager of the Cowra Civic Centre. Today, Jonathan will be responding to the quote, "You cannot discover new lands without consenting to lose sight of the shore for a long time," an Andre Gide quote. Jonathan will discuss ideas for continuing to do what we do, but now how we always do it. So over to you, Jonathan.
Thank you, and I will share my screen. There we go. Can you see that? Yep. Cool. So this is the street yesterday with all beautiful autumn colours. So yes, I'm in Cowra, which is Wiradjuri country. And I'm new to this job. I just started at the beginning of December, having left Riverside Theatres at Parramatta. So quite a change from the hustle and bustle of Western Sydney to a very quiet street in Cowra. Yes. So the quote, is this going to work? There we go. The quote was actually shared with me the other day with Agnes from Form Dance Projects in Western Sydney. You cannot discover new lands without consenting to lose sight of the shore for a long time. And it kind of got my attention at that point. I went, oh, that's really interesting. We had a little chat about it, and this opportunity came up, and I went, that's the perfect quote to use for this. So this is great. So I've obviously taken a bold step out of my comfort zone of Western Sydney, having worked in Western Sydney for many years. What I've done in this role is I'm bringing my knowledge and my skills, but not necessarily knowing all of the answers. And I've had to recognise very much that I'm an outsider, that I'm not a local, and I'm starting from scratch in many ways. To give you the context, the Civic Centre or the council has had a restructure, and my position is a new position, and the direction that we are going in is very new. What I'm finding is the fact that at the moment the councillors kind of want to stick to the shore. They don't want to lose sight of that shore because of they've known what's happened in the past. And what I'm bringing is a vision for the future that is very different to what they've been used to. You may have seen in the info about me that when I arrived, there was no database, no website, no social media channels, no ticketing system, no staff, except for me. No nothing really, no WHS policies, none of that. So I'm kind of really starting from scratch. And I was reminded, even when I went in to grab a coffee at one of the local cafes, when I first started, oh, you're the outsider. It's known that I'm not from town, that I am the outsider. And an interesting twist, I don't actually live in Cowra. I haven't moved to the area. I'm still commuting from where I live over near Llewellyn Cave, so 180 k's away. So I've had to start building databases and networks, and I'm having to ask a lot of questions and do a lot of listening and experimenting and seeing how this community responds to things and what they're interested in and what their thoughts are. As part of that, I've had to do a very large community engagement survey, which I was really excited. It took people about 12.5 minutes to complete on average, and got a really high response rate. In fact, the highest response rate that council has ever had from a survey of its type. So, but looking at this idea of stepping away from the shore and losing sight of it, it's kind of scary and it's daunting. But I want to talk about audiences to start with. And this is an image I think I've used once before in Cairns at the Marketing Summit. This is about audiences and the diversity of our audiences. And I'm seeing this time, and I think from a local approach and what other organisations can do or individuals can do is look at what existing audiences you've got and what new audiences you need. Look at your segmentation. And my presentation actually has a lot of questions in it rather than necessarily answers. Segmentation, do you have this right? Can you slice your database another way that could be more useful? I'll give you an example. Genre, could you divide your database by genre? Well, yes. Can you divide it by emotion? Could you divide it by a descriptive word? For example, theatre with edge. Contemporary music, do you need to divide that into more categories, that kind of thing? Just think about it differently rather than just your traditional models. Who can you partner with to reach audiences you don't normally reach? Sponsors, suppliers, universities, the chiropractor, the tourist authority. Can you use digital platforms to reach new audiences? Is it now the opportunity to do some of that work and try and have conversations with people through channels that you wouldn't normally do or wouldn't normally have time to do? It's a time to ask questions and to seek feedback. Are we getting it right? Is there something we can do better or differently? What do you love about us? What do you not like about us? And communicating as needed, but being very transparent about why you're communicating and what you want to hear back from people and with the purpose of that. Yeah, so that's the audiences stuff. programming. Talking about the programming and asking the questions, is the programming right? Asking audiences, what do you think about some of this stuff that we don't normally present to you? And ask maybe even audiences that you don't have currently about some of the stuff. So an ideal idea I've come up with, and I'm trying to pursue it, is what I'm calling a virtual foyer. So you kind of like a focus group, getting that focus group in a digital space to watch something that they wouldn't normally see or isn't normally presented at the venue, and giving them a taste of that, and then coming back into a space where, like a foyer, where you can then talk about it and have a conversation about it. So I'm calling it a virtual foyer. Yes, so it's a bit of a taste testing thing, and I think you can do that with existing audiences, and I think you can do that then with audiences that you don't have, and say, well, if we did this, would you come for this? Yeah, there's a few options there. And a little tool that I've discovered from a conference I went to last year was live feedback using a tool called Mentimeter. And I'll put the link up in the chat because I found it really useful, and you can use it for live results. People use a smartphone to respond to a question, and that feeds up into, some of you may know about it, into the results. Okay. So, internal discussions and the big icebergs, which sometimes can be daunting things to look at, but now I think is the time to look at some of that. So systems and processes, policies and procedures, organisational structure. You know, is there a way that we can make our operations more contactless or reduce the physical contact for the future so that we can take on board some of the learnings from now? Are we doing the best we can, and how else can we do it? Asking these questions. What are the ideas of the team? Give them a platform to present those. Let go of the structure and the hierarchy, and what can your team teach you? So this is about, particularly for managers and leaders within organisations, facilitating change and giving staff the opportunity to go and explore and come back with ideas and present those ideas. And it's really important that managers shut up and listen so that people can actually be heard and be part of the conversation. You know, if people have been on professional development opportunities or conferences, what did they want to achieve following that? What did others want to achieve? And can you open up your own mind to hear them out and give them the opportunity to present that or flesh it out a bit more? I'm pleased to say I still have my little book from the Marketing Summit back in 2018, which is full of great ideas. And I want to be able to flesh out some of those. And I'm using this time now to be able to do that, to make things as good as I possibly can for the future. So this is about time to play, being creative and collaborative, giving your team permission to spend time looking at these things. We're a creative industry, let's be creative. Scheduling a weekly session for sharing ideas and really listening. Using techniques of play building to give life to ideas. So don't say no to things, try yes and, or yes but. For those of you who've been to drama school or even done drama in high school, you'll know this game. It's a often used one. Open a conversation with the IT people that you have a connection with, depending on your organisation. I've got council IT to talk to about, and ask them what's happening in the digital delivery space, and find out what options they may know about. So not your normal collaborators. And then ask the question, who could be new collaborators for delivery or for improving things or even for digital delivery? And so, here we are. Welcome to Newfoundland. So we've been from the shore to across the ocean to Newfoundland, and this is Newfoundland in Canada. So this is about the future. What am I doing? I'm revising my budgets, and I'm building in quality digital capturing of specific unique events that may allow for monetizing in the future. This means I've got to look at contracting and budgeting now, and think about this. And I think this is a really important thing for people, that given how much people have turned to digital delivery, it's been amazing who's had what kind of sitting in their drawer and has been able to go, yep, well, we've got this and we've got this and we've got this. But for many of us, we've not built that into our budgets to do in the first place. And I think that's a change that we probably should all look at, is what unique offerings have we got coming in the future that we can capture? What does that do to the budget? But also, what does that do for our brand? How can we distribute that? What models are available to us? And, you know, some of you will know National Theatre Live from the UK. We've also got Australian Theatre Live, run by Grant Dodwell. You know, he's been trying to build that in the same model, and it's worth considering. Is digital delivery part of an ongoing model that has different audiences or a crossover? So can this be a collaboration with other venues, producers and communities? I kind of asked the question, is it possible that we will have an audience that never actually comes to our venue, but engages with our product in a digital space? There was a company in the US a number of years ago who, when they first started contemporary dance, they didn't have a home base. They built their audience digitally, and from that, they then worked out where their audience was, and that's how they worked out their tour pattern. It's a really interesting way of finding audiences. And then creating a strategy for what happens if we have to shut down again, whether that be for renovations or for a disaster. But how do we respond? Would we do the same thing next time if we were put in the same position? So, as I said, lots of questions, not necessarily answers, but hopefully lots of things that will prompt thought and ideas within your organisations or your own practice. And that's me.
Thanks, Jonathan. You got some lovely comments about your beautiful images that you shared throughout that. Thank you. Before we jump over to Jacqui, I do have a couple of questions actually, and sort of something to sort of probably ask you to extend on a little bit more. It's a thread that's coming through a few of these sessions. Last week, Merinda Donnelly was talking about the concept of pausing and taking this moment to evaluate, to think, to reflect, to breathe. And I was getting the sense of that when you were talking about looking at, is it the time to ask questions, seeking feedback, and looking at who else you can collaborate with, whether it's your chiropractor or someone else, you know, around, like looking at who your audience could be. Are they someone that's right in front of you that you're perhaps not seeing, or are they audiences that are yet to engage with you? And to draw that to the end of your presentation, the audiences that may never ever come into your bricks and mortar venue, but might actually engage with your online venue. So that concept, what sort of emphasis do you think, how much emphasis are you putting in that space at the moment, and how much do you think, if the sky was the limit, that you should at the moment think about that?
I think because of the fact that I've got a small population within Cowra. It's a bit over 12,000 people within the local government area. You know, it's a regional setting. I'm very much having to think about arts tourism in my programming and creating programs that are going to bring people here for that unique event that's not going to be on offer elsewhere. So it's not just a presenter model, it's there for a producing model as well. But that certainly has led me into thinking about then the digital space of that and capturing that, capturing those unique events and finding ways to extend them beyond the four walls here and those that are able to travel. It really is part of all of my thinking at the moment, and I do have that luxury at the moment of time being new and bringing something that is totally new for this area, but also responding to what people want, and that's been key. So the community have certainly fed back to me their thoughts, and I've responded to that and then gone, well, let's go further than that. So yeah, no, it is part of it. Part of the hard work is probably working out the budget and how much to allow for some of that stuff. And to be honest, from one of the conversations I've had, I'm probably needing to allow about an extra 25,000 for an event that I'm looking at for next year that's got one performance. I might be able to push it to two, but that's going to mean that that budget probably is doubled to allow for the digital component. Will I ever make the money back on that 25,000? Probably not, but it's also then about future branding, raising the profile of Cowra as being a place for arts practice and creation and all that kind of stuff. And looking at different ways of being able to deliver that content. So even through the cinema network and that sort of thing.
I'm quite fascinated by the use of the word digital at the moment. I think so. All of a sudden, it's the thing, and everyone's saying, "You've got to go digital." And this session, actually, the very, very first one, we responded to some very urgent and very, very heartfelt cries for help about how to actually get work online, to live stream, to go digital, digitalization, and all those sorts of things. And I think digital almost means investment in a funny kind of way. And I think if we think of it not as expense, but as actually investment, I think you're right. It's not that you're necessarily going to see a traditional return on investment, and maybe we need to actually rethink and reframe what we consider a return on investment in the marketing comms space, particularly knowing that our audiences have changed, our audiences' behaviours have changed, and then how we engage with both of those two attributes again needs to change, and then hence things like budgets, and then how we actually perceive and respond to a budget. So I think, and I don't think there's any answers yet, and I go back to the concept of pausing and taking that time to reflect and think it through. And if there is one silver lining from all of this, it might be the gift of time has come in some respects, even though it's moving very quickly for us all.
I think it's also important that it may mean from a budget point of view that you do one or two less events physically within your venue to accommodate for that other delivery method and reaching new audiences. And it's a tough decision because many venue managers don't want their venue to be dark. You know, you want to be going all the time, but I asked the question about sustainability. You know, that's not always sustainable. Number one, for staff. Number two, for audiences and the community that venue's in. But, you know, so if you can reach different audiences through another platform, being the digital platform, then, and that means your venue's dark for a day or two, well, maybe that's okay.
Oh, yep, I was on mute, sorry. Because I've got noisy trucks that are kind of going down the road, so I'm very conscious of them imposing into our little space here. I completely agree. I didn't get to talk about virtual foyers, but we'll come back to that because we'll zip over to Jacqui now and have a conversation with her. Jacqui's a specialist in marketing, communications and management, strategic analysis, project and campaign management, event management, social media marketing and training. So she's very busy and has a wealth of experience, having worked with an enormous range of clients around Australia, the City of Sydney, Sydney Festival, Paramasala, even government clients, DFAT, a massive project that she may or may not be able to share with us, Sydney Youth Orchestras, the Taste of Tasmania, so many. So Jacqui's going to share her experience throughout the COVID-19 period and how to meet your audience's needs and market accordingly. Over to you, Jacqui.
Okay. I'll just get the first. Righto, Johnny, this is where I need your help. Is everyone seeing that screen? Yes?
Oh, yep.
Just from beginning.
Ah, there we go. There we go. Hi, everyone. Great to get this opportunity to chat to you all. one of the things I was speaking to Celia and the team about, where I've had a number of clients who needed help very quickly. That's what's happened with all of us. One in particular is a case study I'll talk about, and that's where this image is from. It's the Gallipoli Memorial Club. They hold a $20,000 art prize every year. And unfortunately, the exhibition had actually been hung, and then everything was closed down. But it was very important for the club, particularly the members and for the artists who submitted their artwork for the prize, that the exhibition was still able to be shown. And very important for members of the club who are quite old, as you could imagine, being war vets. They're big mixture in ages of membership, but on average, the average age would be over 70. So the solution was really coming back to the basics, and Jono's touched on a few of these as well, but really understanding who is the audience, who and how are you going to target, making sure your digital platforms, your website, all your images, everything's up to date. Now we've got that time, this precious time where we can go back and revisit everything. It's often the content, as we all know, on the website. I've been meaning to do that. Now's the time when we've got that space while we're in hiatus. Really revising all of your social media platforms as well. Twitter, if you're not using it, get rid of it. I mean, there's so many accounts everyone's got, really focusing on where you see the best traction, where you see the best reach. Also having a look at the content from all various sources like YouTube, Vimeo, Spotify, SoundCloud, depending on your audience as well. It was interesting with the Gallipoli Club because they're 70, as I said, the age range is very diverse. They've been one of my clients for 15 years, and I've been wanting them to update their website for some time. And you'll see in the next slide what I mean. So now is the time to say to them, it needs to be updated now. You want this to go online. We can do a virtual tour. The current website won't hold it. It literally collapses every time you put a new link on it. So it was very quick getting together with my graphic designer and my videographer to get something together very quickly that we turned around in about 2 weeks. But again, coming back to being really specific about your audience, what they need, what they can see. I had to make sure it was simple and easy to use, particularly from the virtual gallery side. We're talking about people who are not terribly tech savvy for the older members, and just making it really easy, just, click and play. And that's obviously often all you need. We get a little bit too techie with ourselves sometimes, I feel. And then backing that up, supporting both social media and a digital campaign. Again, this client, I only convinced them last year to get an Instagram account, which was great for the artist engagement. So that's where that main force was being used. This is the old website here. As you can see, it's a very old school website. It did its trick for just getting basic information about the club, which is not just about the art prize. It's a massive club down near the quay. This is the new website we quickly put together. That's got the gallery page, virtual tour winners, Instagram feed. We'll be revising that when the club reopens. It's currently shut for renovations. We'll be putting everything on there, from memberships, subscriptions to basic information. So the virtual tour was done relatively easy, quite simply, and very reasonably priced. I'm not going to say cheap. The videographer found this fantastic program called Cowra. I know there's probably some of you were on that other talk, I think a couple of weeks ago. Was it Celia? about some of the walkthrough galleries. This is very easy, very simple to use. You just need to photograph, do 360-degree photos. The images are stitched together. This was basically turned around by the videographer, the editor, in about 2 days, and then put straight up online. So one of the things with the key learnings from all of this was it's really important, as much as what my graphic designer and videographer wanted to do some really crazy stuff with this. And luckily this client, it's quite, budget isn't so much of an issue. They're very conscious of the need to provide their audiences and their members for what they need. It was just important to make sure you could access, and anyone of any age could access it. I did research the virtual tour with quite a few of my older friends to make sure, and there was some really interesting feedback about not being able to see the text, not understanding how to move the cursor. While we presume don't do that in some of these situations with new tech, some of the people that I was talking to who are over 70 didn't understand how to move their mouse in a way. So there's quite basic instructions there. Also how to target, you know, what's the right mix. Still for that older audience, I still will go for some print ads, but there's a lot of obviously digital ads as well to get the virtual tour clicks through. Age of use, again, I said it's a strong factor to make sure it's easy to use. I always use trusted suppliers. I've got a very good team around me, which are fantastic. Thank you. One's on there today, I noticed. And as I said before, now is the time to update everything, all of your web, all of your content. It's so important when we are being forced to be online, to really focus on this time to create new and interesting things that everyone can access. And that's about it.
Sorry, slow to the unmute today. Thank you, Jacqui. There was so much in that, and so much in, we've got some questions that I need to throw to both of you. I think one of the main things, like we're all being forced online. We were forced online very, very quickly, even though a number of us, I won't include myself in that group because I don't think I'm not tech savvy. I like to think other people around me are tech savvy and lead me into spaces and keep me well and truly informed. But I think the assumption that everyone can actually do everything and is adopting everything as quickly as the world is asking us to is quite a big ask. And I think you're exactly right about making sure that everything is simple and quite straightforward. And I think that goes back to the user journey again, doesn't it? Everything comes back to this the concept of design and making sure that what we're doing is accessible and thought through, and using the time that we have at the moment to actually step through that journey for everyone. How do you allow for your audience to talk to, or how did the Gallipoli Art Prize, how did they listen to their audiences to know how to meet their tech needs?
That's an interesting question, because this is not a traditional arts client. They actually run a club, so it's very much a bricks and mortar type establishment. So they've pretty well handballed the art prize over to me for the last sort of 15 odd years. So it's me understanding and talking to the members. They generally have a bricks and mortar, beautiful, quite formal presentation. There's quite a lot of ministers, the GG's normally there. It's quite an event just before Anzac Day. So I have known a lot of the members for a long time, and a lot of the artists, and there's some quite well-known artists that have won this prize over the years. So it's I suppose getting to understand their audience one-on-one. The feedback, particularly through Instagram from the artist point of view, has been fantastic. There's been numerous messages. They're so pleased to be able to also have the opportunity to show their work in the virtual gallery to gallerists all around the world. for them to send it to potential people who want to buy some artwork, and for just people, their friends and family, to experience it, which I thought was lovely. Generally, people don't get the chance to go and see it. The exhibition normally only stays for about a week before Anzac Day and a week afterwards, and then it's pulled down. So at least this way it will be there for a little while. So
yeah, we definitely can't underestimate the basics, I don't think. Jonathan, did that come up in your community engagement survey that you did when you were talking to your community and hearing from them? Is that the sort of thing that they gave you, that very clear message?
Look, they did give me some very clear messages, yes. I guess I was quite purposeful in the construction of the survey, to open it to all sorts of possibilities, and all sorts of different types of performances, I purposely opened Pandora's box a little bit to kind of go, here's the world of possibilities, respond. And I also made sure I gave them plenty of opportunity with free fields to respond to certain questions, and to really just air their views. From the responses, I've extracted all of the comments and tried to categorize them, which helped me put together my presentation to council. But I printed them off because I knew that councillors would want to see all of these comments verbatim, and there's 22 pages just of comments with all sorts of stuff, and some of it's just really hits things nail on the head, and some people were very focused in their own little world, and other people were thinking broader community. So it was great to have that. It was stuff, a lot of it was stuff I'd been thinking anyway, but it was great to have the words of the community for the argument.
Yeah, cool. I'm just going to let everyone know who's actually asked the name of that program. Jackie's just reposted it back into the chat box, the QLA program, and we'll repost some of the other programs that David Finnegan and the others had mentioned a few weeks back as well. They escaped me just at this minute, but we'll reshare some of those.
So I think the advantage of this program also was you can use any camera with it. So I think some of them are quite proprietary, but this one's very open platform. Just one thing too, actually my designer's on here, she's reminded me to say one thing we were able to do was to get the artists to record their video, and the president of the club to record the actual exhibition opening and a formal sort of explanation behind some of the artworks in the club, and that added a real richness of content, and particularly the winner giving some feedback on her art painting, which was beautiful and had great depth of meaning. So it really enriched the whole experience as well.
I think that's really important to remember, because at the moment content is key, and we've all heard that. We all sort of say that all the time, and I think even ourselves having to absorb so much and then to be asked to create a whole new suite of content all the time. And there's actually a lot of content around us. And it goes back to that pausing for a moment and actually thinking, well, is it the intro from the curator or the artist or the gallery owner, or is it hearing from the producer or a performer who's not on the stage at the moment, but how are they engaging with that character when they're off the stage, or an artist preparing for an exhibition that's 6, 12, 24 months down the track, and how are they feeling in this period? There's lots of content to create and develop at the moment that does give that depth and breadth to the stories, I think, and to the vision when we are able to capture the vision. Something else that sort of comes up is that we're really lucky when it is an area of arts practice that is visual, that we can translate into that digital space very quickly. But have either of you at the moment come across something that's a little more in the challenging space, where it's not something that's there to capture, and then it may not necessarily be the physical going into the digital immediately and swiftly, that is the answer. Are there other things that are taking a little bit longer to actually, other areas of representation of arts practice that are taking a bit longer to sort of think through and to adapt for you at this time that you've been asked to do?
I think, I mean, I've had to put a lot of, as everyone mostly here, I can see in the chat coming through, putting shows into hiatus and mothballing things. I've found that very challenging, as I'm sure everyone has. There's a couple of things I've been working on that are about to be announced, so I can't mention them, but I find that incredibly challenging to work out how's the right way to communicate this. And also to give, I think something I'm saying to a lot of my clients with social media as well is, yeah, it's horrible, it's terrible, but you know, with the arts, you know, and the 3 or 4 posts you're doing a week, can we just have one of them that's fun and nice and happy? Because everyone's kind of getting to that stage as well. We're all over it. So and I found some of my clients are starting to do that, which is great. Like it's crap, but we have the content, we have the music, we have the color and movement. So let's try and also maintain, because some of my clients have found quite a lot of drop off on their social media feeds as well, because people knowing there's nothing on. So at least to try and keep some engagement with audiences at this time, I think is really important. And it's nice to have some color and movement.
Yeah, we found that too. And I think, you know, at council, one of the initiatives or one of the part of the recovery package was a little Instagram spot that we've created so that there is a spot for people to actually stream or put content through. Oh, I want
the office dog. I'm sorry. It's been
Hello.
fans out there.
Oh, there you go. I love it when the pets pop up.
All of us wonder dog.
A Zoom call is not complete without a pet popping up at this particular point in time. A couple more questions. Jonathan, I think you might have sort of started to answer this a little bit for Tom from the Theatre Royal, but did you use a government protocol or did you create your survey from scratch? I know you said before that it was quite tailored, put a lot of thought and depth into it, but are you able to expand on that a little bit more for us?
Yeah, so
how should they start? Yeah.
So what is interesting is that where I've come from, a local government that did have a lot of red tape and strict protocols, I keep asking questions within this council about, well, what's the protocol here or what's the policy here? And I get blank looks, which has given me an awful amount of freedom because they're not, it's just not come up before. So I've still made sure that, you know, eyes have run past the survey, but no, I had a lot of freedom with the creation of it. And to be honest, it's a bit of an unknown for lots of people. And I've had to take a lot of time to explain sometimes what I'm talking about and put it into different terms, because I've got so used to, I don't know, not jargon necessarily, but speaking or having conversations in a particular way, and the language that we use and the concepts that we use, that even in my interview for the role, I was asking about the operational model and threw 3 different models at them, and I got kind of blank looks because they weren't sure what I was talking about. No, so from the survey, I had freedom to create it, and then part of that was shaped from having a couple of conversations with people that were a bit more connected. So we've got a regional art gallery in Cowra across the road. So having a conversation with the director from there, getting a sense of things from him, and then one of the staff who looks after grants is involved in amateur art or community arts. He had a few ideas and suggestions, and then also reaching out to Stephen Champion at Bathurst Memorial Entertainment Centre and Michelle Pearce at Orange Civic Theatre, and to the team headed up by Tracy Callanan at Arts Out West, which is our regional arts development organisation. So it's been, before I got to creating the survey, I had to do lots of asking questions of others first to get a greater sense, which I suppose I had the advantage that I was new and I could go, I don't know, so this is why I have to ask. And I quickly learned that some of the assumptions I'd made were completely wrong. And that's a good thing too. Yeah, so does that kind of answer that? Yeah.
I think that was great. Sue Goldfish from UNSW Creative Practice Lab has asked, has anyone had success at charging for online events, or is everyone out there expecting online events to be free? Now, this is a question that comes up quite frequently in different ways, and I don't know that there's one particular answer to it. So I'd be really keen to hear from.
I have heard of one artist, Trevor Ashley, made quite early on. It was about 2 or 3 weeks, or maybe about 2 weeks after we went into lockdown. Now he's Trevor Ashley. If audiences don't know, you guys don't know it, there is a cabaret artist, Jono, sometimes drag, yeah, sometimes.
Yeah, drag, yeah.
He's lots of fun, a huge personality, quite a big man that likes to dress in tight women's clothing. Very niche audience, very specific audience, and he has a lot of loyal followers. Now, he did manage to make quite a bit of money from doing a live performance with quite detailed and confusing. This is the other thing about trying to keep this stuff simple. It was quite difficult to access it. You had to have separate links and then passwords and things like that to access it, and a key number or something like that. But he did quite well out of it. I know Dave Graney and the Coral Snakes. Anyone know would know Dave Graney. He and Claire did a live gig, nominal fee, $5. That kind of worked okay. It's not my jam. I find them hard to engage with. Part of my going out is wanting to be involved with people. So, but for artists, it's great. There is some income. But they're the only two I know of personally that have made it work.
I'm not quite sure of the actual dollars and cents success, but some success from some people who were kind of already in that area a little bit. But I think, Jacqui, what you just mentioned with Trevor is the fact that he has his own audience. And I think this is particularly important for any artists, practitioners that are out there that are not necessarily part of an organisation, but the brand of you as an artist is really important, particularly for marketing people like Jacqui and myself who rely on and need you to have that base audience kind of in many ways to start with, so that you've got some sort of a following. I've got a friend who is in New York, was on the national tour of Come From Away, and she spends, I see more stuff from her Facebook page than I do from her posting herself, because we're friends together, but she builds her brand of herself, which is a really new area, I think, for many artists and performers, that they've got to have a social media presence as well. And, you know, it's key questions that you ask when a show's coming in, or you're working with an artist. Okay, what are all your social media channels? And you start to, well, even from a programming point of view, I've had programmers come to me and say, oh, what do you think about us programming this artist? And the first thing I do is I then look at, well, what social media presence do they have? Do they have many followers? Do they have many likes? You know, what's the go? Do they, you know, will we have a base audience to start with?
Exactly. That's key. That's key. And someone like Trevor, Dave Graney as well, they've been working their social media feeds during this quite well. And like they have their loyal niche audiences. So, yeah.
I think that's a really interesting and actually probably a very understated thought, Jonathan, that we actually do think of that first audience now as the online audience before we think of the physical. And they've come from the physical potentially. And I would say traditionally for the most part, except if you're specifically an online practitioner. But, and I think that's where there's probably more work for us to do as marketing comms people to actually unpack that a bit more and actually look at what that means in this current environment, or what it could mean for the future, where the potentials lie in there, where the opportunity are, and the concept of branding. Jacqui, what's your take on branding at the moment, and another whole conversation on its own to be talking about.
That's completely
the
standalone session, I think.
yeah.
I think, look, there's been some fabulous marketing. There was something I found on LinkedIn about a marketing guru out of the UK who's saying nothing's going to change. We're all just going to go back the way we were. He noticed the same thing with mad cow disease when he was marketing in England. You know, the meat and livestock trade fell down, but then it went back up after mad cow and even is stronger than ever before. There's a couple of chains of thought about what's going to happen. Particularly with branding, I think this is going to potentially open up a whole lot of new audiences. We may lose some physical audiences, particularly some of the older audiences now who may not feel safe going out after this. So they will be reliant more and more on online content. I know some of the ones who through Gallipoli have emailed me and said now they've worked it out, they're off, you know, sort of thing. So they've found all these other things on the Vimeo and the YouTube channels that they love. And I think that's something we've got to be flexible and cater for.
Because, you know, the attributes of like loyalty and trust that the concept of brand relies so heavily on. Like
Absolutely. And also, you know, for regional, I've noticed there's a lot of regional out there. It's really important to be inclusive, you know, for people to have this opportunity to see performances or art exhibitions or whatever that they haven't had a chance before. So it has opened it up. But it's got to be good quality. I mean, it's, you know, that's always been a bugbear of mine. So you can't make any whole thing up.
It's interesting. I was talking to someone yesterday and they were saying that, and I don't know how public this information is, so I will just say a well-established theatre company in the lower North Shore is looking at the possibility of a virtual ticket, because they do have certain audiences who've gone, I really still want to watch their shows and I'm happy to pay for a ticket, but I just find it too difficult to get to the theatre now, or you know, I can't come at the time that I normally came and I can't get seats at other times, whatever the reason. But if they can then get a virtual ticket and watch it on their iPad or whatever, that's good enough for them, and they're still quite happy to pay for that. And I think that's a really interesting idea that's come from this and could be explored more.
And I think the older the audience is, and as the boomers get older and older, it's going to be becoming more of a thing.
Yeah. Paul commented earlier that he's noticed that a few people are letting choose their ticketing prices, anything, you know, from as low as $5, you know, as you were saying earlier, Jacqui. And I think, I mean, that's another whole conversation on its own, the valuation and the monetization and how that's changed, why that has changed so rapidly or so quickly, or has it needed to?
And I haven't kept up to date from the musician's point of view what's happening with licensing with APRA AMCOS and stuff like that as well, because that affects them also for live performers. I don't know. That's another minefield. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's another whole conversation.
It's interesting. We experimented maybe 12, 13 years ago at Riverside in my second last time I've been there, and where we did do a music concert of someone that wasn't as well known, and it was really hard to judge where we should price it. And we did a choose your own price with a minimum, and it was fascinating watching what people then decided to pay and the value that they put on it. And I think there's probably, for a lot of emerging stuff or stuff that doesn't have a stronger brand, there's probably a lot of room for the choose your own price with a minimum, because given how much people value their dollar, you know, they have their own personal limit of where I'd like to see that I'm interested, but I'm not guaranteed. I'm happy to pay $20, but someone else goes, actually, no, I think I'd really like that. I'm happy to pay 30. I think there's definitely room for those conversations and pricing ideas within organisations and venues and producers. It's slightly terrifying, but it may also be good for getting a better sense of reality of what is popular or of interest to audiences.
And that sort of just leads me just to that last point that I just did want to tip on before we close out at 3 o'clock, was your virtual foyers. And I think tell us a little more about this, because this might be something that, you know, it might be a really, yeah, coffee.
So, yep, sure. So my idea, and it really is in the early stages, and I'm not quite sure of the technology to be able to do this, but, you know, I'm sure there's a way. I convinced myself there must be a way of do things. But that idea that, you know, we always, not always, but a lot of us will stop in the foyer afterwards and grab a drink and we'll have a conversation, or even at interval, we'll stop and have a conversation about whatever it is that we're watching and enjoying and analysing it, however deep the conversation is. But given the lower risk there is in some aspects with digital, from a taste testing in a focus group situation of going, okay, let's all sit together now in a virtual space, and where for the next 20 minutes, you're going to watch part of a performance. Or maybe that we, you know, using technology like Zoom, you can send people off into 2 different rooms or 3 different rooms to watch 3 different things. And then you come back into the foyer, into a forum kind of like this, and then have the conversation and have the key questions to ask. What did you think of this? How did you respond? Rather than just doing it in a follow-up survey, but in that real time, you know, let's have a chat. Partly for the social aspect, which the foyer brings, but then also to extract information. And I think it'd be really valuable for programmers to sit potentially quite quietly in that foyer and just listen, kind of in the same way you hear those anecdotes of when staff have gone to the bathroom at interval and the conversations that they've heard between patrons in the toilet. You know, it's giving us permission and allowing us to listen in.
Yes, we've all heard some very insightful, helpful marketing tips, haven't we? I think I don't think you can never not. And Renee was just suggesting a not dissimilar thing is the breakout rooms in Zoom almost, where you can do little taste testers. And I was watching something last night for about 5 minutes, and they were talking about the different ways that restaurants and cafes can adapt back into this new world. And it's not a dissimilar way of testing and taste testing or serving things up in a couple of different ways, and then getting that feedback back, but then also capturing and coaxing new audiences potentially into your physical space, but then also into your virtual or your online spaces as again 2 separate sorts of things. Well, I think we have to close out today, but thank you for such a wonderfully interesting conversation around adapting. I think adapting and adaptation are a forefront of everyone's minds as we step into the next phase or looking towards rebuilding and then recovery and wherever life may take us. And I think there's many, many, many more things to unpack. So thank you, Jacqui and Jonathan, for your very generous time. They'll be in and around online for any further questions. And if you have any other questions for us or for our next panel, digitalsolutions@australiacouncil.gov, send us a little note and we'll respond. Please don't forget any of the other offerings from Council that may answer some of your questions or give you some useful insights and clues into the world. We have creative connection sessions on Wednesday and Friday, and then on Friday we also have our First Nations roundtable. We'll also, I'm just going to add one more thing into my little list of things to let you know about, is our First Nations Arts Awards on May the 27th at 6 p.m. We're live streaming a broadcast of a lovely event that we have every year celebrating the creativity of our First Nations peoples and communities, and awarding some significant, the Red Ochre Awards, the Dreaming Awards and the fellowships. But all details around all of our offerings are on our Australia Council website. And I just wanted to thank all of the members of the Facebook group who are coming back week after week. We hope that we're answering your questions. If we're not, keep sending those questions through. And if you'd like to join the panel, have something to share, have a great case study that you would like to share with the wider group, or something that you would love to present and ask questions around, shoot us a line and we'll come back to you. But until next week, thank you, Jacqui, Jonathan, and the team behind the scenes. See you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Great to see you.